Her family sold her for status. The human infiltration specialist who saved her gave her hope. Down in the labyrinthine depths of Nova City, where neon rivers snaked between towers of chrome and glass, the world hummed with encrypted secrets. To Jalen, a human infiltration specialist clad in adaptive mesh, it was all background static. White noise in his earpiece, the thrum of servers overhead, the muffled shouts from distant street markets filtered through layers of reinforced concrete. He moved like a shadow through the maintenance arteries beneath the astral pinnacle, the most secure building in the quadrant. The mission was simple: extract the Helion cartel's sentient navigation protocol, in and out. No witnesses, no complications. Jalen knelt before the last security seal, a black box slick with condensation, humming with buried power. He pressed his old-world pulse key against it, counting the microseconds as the code unwound. A muted click. He exhaled, easing the panel aside. Behind it, a narrow hatch yawned, cold air swirling around his boots. He expected humming racks of servers, walls laced with blinking lights. Instead, the room was cavernous and empty, but for a single dais rising from the center, lit by a pillar of hard blue light. On that dais, a figure. She was unmistakably alien. Tall, willowy, with skin alive with shifting, luminous patterns, lavender and gold and deep oceanic blue, each movement sending iridescent ripples across her scales. Her eyes were vertical slits, gleaming with spectral light, and her features were elegantly reptilian: high cheekbones, a slender snout, delicate frills at her jawline. A cascade of cables spiraled from the base of her skull, plunging into the console behind her. Her posture was limp, gaze unfocused. Jalen froze. This wasn't a protocol. This was a person, a living being, caged by circuitry. He stepped closer, the hush of his boots lost in the pulse of her breathing, barely audible. He could see her chest rise and fall. Her name, he would later learn, was Lysara. His pulse quickened. The job was never to steal a mind. His code was simple: never cross the line into trafficking. The Helion cartel trafficked plenty. He was meant to be better. Yet as he hesitated, a faint twitch fluttered through her fingers. She was still alive. Leaving her meant death. He edged forward, voice low. "Can you hear me?" No response. Her eyes flickered, a glitch of awareness lost in the haze. The cables at her skull pulsed with sickly yellow light. He weighed his options. If he ran now, she died, shut down like a piece of corrupted code. But to save her meant crossing the Helions, risking everything. Jalen crouched beside her, eyes scanning the interface. A mess of alien and human tech, old-world solder and fresh nanofiber. He thumbed his disruptor, dialing in a pulse meant to override the neural interface. "Hang on," he murmured. "I'm getting you out." He pressed the disruptor to the largest cable and triggered the surge. Blue lightning danced through the wires. Lysara convulsed, jaw snapping open in a silent cry, eyes wide and blazing. The alarms wailed, high-pitched, shrill, echoing through the chamber. Red lights spun across the walls. Jalen yanked the cables free, ignoring the acrid smell of burnt polymer. He caught her as she sagged forward, impossibly light, almost boneless in his arms. Her tail curled loosely against his thigh, scales rough and trembling. Overhead, the room's doors slammed open. Security drones shrieked down the corridor, plasma emitters whining as they scanned for targets. Jalen ducked, shielding Lysara's head with his arm, and bolted for the hatch. Plasma rounds hissed past, melting streaks in the ferrocrete. He vaulted a fallen panel, cradling her to his chest, and vanished into the shadowed arteries beneath the city. The chase was a blur: left, right, down, a slide across a coolant slick, a desperate leap through a half-welded hatch. He hit the delta underlevels, lungs burning, the weight of Lysara a constant fragile reminder in his arms. He found their sanctuary, a forgotten cargo pod sealed tight, thick with dust and the taste of recycled air. He laid Lisara on a battered cot, her frame trembling. Her gaze tracked him now, alien yet vulnerable, pupils flickering with pain and confusion. The neural socket at her neck was raw, inflamed, oozing a faint shimmer of biofluid. Jalen knelt beside her, searching her eyes for comprehension. "This will hurt," he whispered, voice gentler than he felt. Did she understand? He couldn't know. He worked quickly, hands steady even as his heart hammered. Sterilizer, extractor, tissue regenerator. He lined the tools on the edge of the cot. "Easy, easy," he said, voice barely more than a breath. As he gripped the base of the port, Lisara shuddered, her tail lashing against the metal floor. He slid the extractor beneath the embedded cable, counting under his breath. 1, 2. With a twist and a click, the port came free. She screamed, a raw electric sound that vibrated in his bones. Her body arched, then collapsed, breath ragged. Jalen pressed a regenerator patch to the wound, whispering soothing nonsense. "You're safe. You're free. Stay with me." He offered water, holding the cup to her lips. Her tongue flicked out, serpentine, tasting the air. She drank, eyes never leaving his face. For the first time, her pupils narrowed, sharp and focused. There was a flicker of understanding, a thread of gratitude, and something else, cautious and new. He reached for her hand, and she met him halfway. Their fingers touched, her scales warm beneath his skin. A strange warmth pulsed between them, fragile but real. In the hush of the forgotten pod, with alarms still echoing in distant corridors, it was enough. Time lost all meaning in the dim cargo pod. Shadows crept over rusted bulkheads, the thrum of old machinery marking hours in an endless dusk. Lisara was a being of sensation, forced to rediscover the world in fragments. Jalen watched her as she learned. The taste of synth fruit, a burst of sweet, artificial tang, brought tears to her eyes, confusion flickering in their mirrored depths. The roughness of a blanket made her flinch as if every fiber was a memory of pain. She spent long stretches tracing the shifting iridescent patterns on her own skin, marveling at each ripple of light and color, as if seeing herself for the first time. Jalen adapted to her silences, learned the language of her gestures. He noticed the way the generator's hum unsettled her, how her scales prickled when the sound grew too loud. He learned that she only rested when he was close, her breathing slowing, the tension in her jaw easing when his presence filled the cramped pod. In the new, terrifying world of Nova City's underbelly, he became her anchor. Her physical wounds closed, skin knitting and swelling, the neural socket at her neck now a puckered scar. But the psychic scars ran deeper. Sometimes she would go rigid, caught in invisible storms. Sometimes she would whimper in an alien tongue, syllables twisted by pain. The cartel had fused her mind with invasive tech, coils of foreign memory and code tangled with her thoughts, much of it still lurking in her skull. Jalen knew the danger. He kept a hand on his old-world sidearm, even as he stayed gentle with her. One night, as Lisara tried to sleep, Jalen's comm crackled, one of his last contacts. The message was brief, urgent. The cartel's assassin was in the city, tracking them. Jalen's last credits vanished into the ether, traded for coordinates and a name, a rogue cyberneticist, hidden in the lawless fringe. He packed their meager belongings, an ancient duffel, a tattered blanket, spare charge cells. Lisara watched, her eyes wide and uncertain. "We have to move," Jalen said softly, crouching before her. "It's not safe here." Fear flickered in her gaze, a pattern of pale blue racing across her cheekbones. Still, she nodded. She pulled the camouflage cloak close, its refractive mesh flickering as she activated the mimicry field. Hesitant, she pressed to his side, following him into the chaos of the lower city. Nova City's underlevels were a maelstrom, Shouting vendors, the metallic stink of coolant and sweat, flickering neon advertising pleasures and poisons. Lysara recoiled from touch at first. Any brush of his hand made her tense, tail twitching in warning. But as the crowd pressed, she leaned in, letting his presence shield her. Jalen guided her through alleys strung with glowing wires, through checkpoints manned by bored mercenaries. She clung to him when noise and color threatened to overwhelm. Finally, they reached the cyberneticist's lair, a cluttered den wedged in the shadow of a collapsed maglev pylon. The door opened with a shudder, revealing a figure hunched over a work table, surrounded by a chaos of tools and glimmering implants. The cyberneticist was Thalaxian, his scaled face lined with age, 6 prosthetic limbs sprouting from his torso, each one tipped with a different implement. He turned, mechanical eyes focusing on Lysara. "Bring her," he grunted. Jalen helped Lysara forward, her hand trembling in his. The Thalaxian's upper arms cradled her head, his lower limbs unspooling sensor arrays. "The cartel's work," he muttered, probing the base of her skull. "They didn't intend for her to survive separation. Most hosts break." Lysara winced as he pressed a probe to her temple. Jalen squeezed her hand. "Can you help her?" The cyberneticist's uppermost claw flicked through a hollow screen of alien schematics. "Maybe. Extraction will hurt, badly. Psychic backlash is likely. She could burn out." He looked at Jalen, a cold glint in his artificial gaze. "You ready for that?" Jalen nodded. "I'm not leaving her." Lysara's hand found his, squeezing hard. She closed her eyes, breathing ragged. Jalen brushed her scales, murmuring, "I'm right here, I promise." The procedure began. The Thalaxian's limbs worked in perfect synchronicity, weaving between flesh and circuitry. Lysara's back arched, her jaw clenched as he worked. Suddenly she screamed, a piercing, psychic wail that slammed through Jalen's skull. For an instant the world vanished. Visions flooded him. Star charts written in burning glyphs, galaxies swirling in unfamiliar patterns. Alien dialects crashed through his mind, words he should not know. He saw war fleets assembling on the edge of known space, banners bearing the sigil of the cartel. The cartel wasn't just a crime syndicate, they were the spearhead of something far greater, and Lysara had been their living oracle, a strategy engine, the invasion's key. Jalen staggered, gripping Lysara's shoulder. The world snapped back as the Thalaxian finished the extraction, tossing aside a charred coil of neural hardware. Lysara slumped, shaking, eyes rolling in her head. "She's alive," the doctor said, voice grave. "But she'll need time, and so will you." Jalen helped Lysara to her feet, ignoring the throbbing in his own mind. They slipped away, vanishing into the city's labyrinth once more. Their new hideout was smaller, deeper, barely more than a power conduit with enough space for a cot and 2 breathing bodies. Lysara clung to Jalen as the tremors racked her frame. "They are coming," she whispered, voice shaking. "I saw it. Their ships, their mines." Her claws dug into his arm, desperate. "I was their map, their weapon." Jalen wrapped his arms around her. "You're not theirs anymore. We'll find a way to stop them." Her recovery was brutal. Without the cartel's dampers, her psionic abilities surged, visions racking her body with pain. Sometimes her scales flashed in wild colors, her breathing shallow and erratic. Sometimes she seized, limbs thrashing, words pouring out in a dozen tongues. Jalen held her through every fit, speaking gently, grounding her with his presence. He learned to read the subtle shifts in her iridescent skin before a vision struck. How a shimmer of gold at her throat meant a storm was coming, how the tip of her tail coiled tight when a seizure loomed. He kept her safe, and in the silent hours between, a bond grew, tentative at first, then deeper, forged by adversity. She learned that his touch meant safety, that his heartbeat was an anchor when the world threatened to drown her. One night, after a particularly violent seizure, Lysara lay panting, sweat slicking her scales. Jalen knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from her brow. She reached up, trembling, and touched his face. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Why did you save me? You were sent for Data, not for me." Jalen looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. "I don't trade in people. I never have. Not for any price." She uncoiled her tail, looping it gently around his leg. The gesture was intimate, a wordless question. "You risked everything," she said, searching his face. He shrugged, a wry, helpless smile twisting his lips. "Humans are unpredictable." "I guess I am too." Lysara pressed her palm to his, fingers splaying across his skin. "No. You saw hope where others saw only code." Outside, distant sirens wailed, the city shifting restlessly in its sleep. Somewhere above, the cartel's assassin moved closer, tracking every heartbeat, every whisper in the underworld. But Jalen's world had narrowed to this moment, her hand on his, the warmth of her scales, the impossible trust in her eyes. As the assassin closed in, Jalen knew he would risk everything for her. A sudden vision seized Lysara, a flash of silver, a scent of ozone, the taste of metal and fear. Her breath caught. "He's close," she whispered, eyes wide, scales rippling with alarm. Jalen didn't hesitate. He shoved their few belongings into a battered satchel and pulled her to the back wall, hands finding the old vent grill. He wrenched it open, heart pounding. "The assassin?" he asked, voice tight. Lysara nodded, urgency sharpening her features. "He is 2 levels above, 30 seconds, no more." Jalen ducked into the ventilation shaft, Lysara gliding behind, her tail brushing the metal. The shaft was barely wide enough for them both. The clang of boots on ferrocrete echoed behind, a hunter's rhythm, precise and relentless. Jalen shoved the grill back in place and crawled, adrenaline burning away his fatigue. Lysara followed, luminous skin lighting their way. He glanced over his shoulder. "You all right?" She nodded, mouth set. "Keep going." They emerged above the freight docks, open space below, cranes swinging, loaders hissing. Jalen scanned the crates, eyes landing on a battered cargo freighter prepping for launch. He pointed. "That one. Now." They dropped from the shaft, landing hard behind a stack of carbonite containers. Lysara winced, but didn't complain. Jalen steered her through the maze of crates, ducking the gaze of bored dockhands and surveillance drones. They found a hatch near the ship's stern, barely ajar. Jalen slipped inside, Lysara right behind. The hiss of pressurizing air was their only witness as they vanished into the shadows. The hold was cramped and cold, filled with crates of mining equipment and canisters that hummed faintly. They wedged themselves behind a stack, knees drawn up, breath mingling in the darkness. As the ship rumbled to life, Jalen finally let himself collapse, head against the cool metal. In the confined space, the last of his professional detachment slipped away. Every brush of Lysara's luminous skin sent tiny sparks through him. Her tail, warm and agile, curled unconsciously around his ankle. Her scent, a mingling of ozone, spice, and something wild, filled the air. He found himself noticing every detail, the faint thrum of her heartbeat, the way her fingers traced idle patterns on her arm, the slow rhythm of her breathing. She was healing, slowly. The haunted look in her eyes had faded, replaced by curiosity and a fierce, searching intelligence. In the endless monotony of the ship's hold, Lysara observed him as if he were a puzzle. She watched the way he moved, the calluses on his hands, the way he ran a finger through his tangled hair. At times he caught her studying him with a scientist's focus, head cocked, pupils dilating. One night, as the ship drifted through the black, Lysara leaned in close, her face mere inches from his. She inhaled deeply, eyes fluttering. "Your scent is unique," she said softly, her voice a low vibration. "Among my people, it is a sign of trust. I could only remember. Now I can feel it. It is good." Jalen's cheeks flushed. He held her gaze, uncertain. "You get used to it. Human sweat and recycled air." She shook her head, scales glimmering. "It is not unpleasant, it is grounding." She reached out, fingers light against his jaw. "I want to understand you." He swallowed, nerves prickling. "You're a quick study." She smiled, small, but real. "I must be. My survival depends on it." They fell into a new rhythm. In the darkness, she pressed close, her skin a living aurora against his. At first, Jalen stiffened, old habits screaming for distance, but she explained, voice gentle. "Physical contact stabilizes my psionic field and lowers your stress levels." He laughed, the sound bouncing off the metal walls. "Is that your excuse?" She blinked, genuinely puzzled. "Excuse?" He shook his head, a crooked grin on his lips. "Never mind. Stay as close as you want." She accepted the invitation, curling herself around him, the low, thrumming hum of her body soothing them both. It wasn't about sex, not in this place of hunger and exhaustion. It was about connection, being seen, being held. Jalen let go of the last walls inside him, let himself be comforted. They became each other's refuge, their breaths a secret language in the dark. Days bled together in hyperspace. Lysara's wounds faded, her eyes growing sharper, her movements more deliberate. They spoke quietly, sharing memories, a childhood on opposite sides of the galaxy, losses and betrayals, half-finished hopes. Jalen found himself laughing more easily. Sometimes she'd catch his hand and hold it, her thumb tracing circles over his knuckles. Eventually, the ship docked at a mining outpost on the edge of the system, a skeleton of steel and ice orbiting a dead moon. They slipped from the cargo bay before the crew noticed stowaways, vanishing into the maze of tunnels and exhaust-choked airlocks. Here, Lysara's visions sharpened. She would wake in the middle of the cycle, eyes unblinking, breath ragged. "They will destroy entire systems," she whispered one night, staring through Jalen as if he were made of glass. "Entire worlds gone. The loss is unacceptable." He reached for her, taking her hand. "How long?" She shook her head. "Days. Perhaps less. The cartel's fleets are gathering. I can feel them, like a storm pressing on the back of my mind." He saw the change in her then. The fear was still there, but underneath it, resolve. She was no longer just a victim or a tool. She was a fighter. And in her eyes, he saw his own purpose shifting. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about her and the millions of lives at stake. "Then we fight," Jalen said, his voice steady. "We stop them. Somehow." Lysara looked at him, scales shimmering with new light. For a moment she was silent. Then slowly she smiled, a real, rare smile that lit her whole face. "Unlikely. Our chance is less than 1 in 5. Jalen grinned, heart pounding. "I'll take those odds. What's the plan, Oracle?" She squeezed his hand, her gaze fierce. "We make them believe the impossible is possible, together." Their resolve hummed between them, fierce and defiant, a spark against the encroaching dark. Their plan was reckless, so audacious Jalen could feel the danger humming in his bones as they approached the asteroid vault, lost in a belt of shattered moons. Infiltrate the cartel's backup repository, steal the invasion plans, and broadcast them across the galaxy. No second chances. No way out except forward. Lysara's hands trembled as she studied the schematic, phosphor blue in the cramped cockpit of their stolen shuttle. "I must interface with the network," she murmured, voice thin. Her scales flickered with anxiety. "The core is shielded. No physical access, only neural." Jalen watched her, seeing the shadow of her old captivity in every uncertain movement. He reached for her hand, warm and strong. "We do this together. I'll anchor you, neural tether, just like we practiced. You're not alone this time." She looked up, hope and dread warring in her eyes. "If I lose myself, you pull me back." He squeezed her fingers. "I promise." They breached the asteroid's shell, slipping through maintenance tunnels carved into obsidian and ice. The heist was a ballet. Jalen crawled forward, eyes flicking over holographic traps, hands moving in silent precision as he sliced through tripwires, scrambled sensors, and lured watchful drones away with false heat signatures. Lysara moved behind him, each step silent, every gesture guided by the pulse of her visions. He glanced back as she gestured, her eyes glazed for a moment. "Left. There's a grav snare ahead." He nodded, shifting course. "I see it. Nice catch." She smiled faintly, tension easing. "You have a talent for making chaos look graceful." He grinned. "Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain." They moved as one, partners now, no longer rescuer and rescued. Jalen trusted her insights implicitly, and Lysara, for the first time, admired the ingenuity in his every decision. She memorized the way his hands danced over a lock, the quiet confidence in his voice as he guided her deeper, the way he always checked to make sure she was all right. They reached the heart of the vault, a chamber walled with obsidian glass, fracturing the light into 1,000 cold shards. At the center stood the terminal, a throne of wires and steel, its cables coiling like serpents, a cruel echo of the machine that had once imprisoned her. Lysara hesitated, breath hitching, her fingers twined with Jalen's, grip iron tight. "You are my anchor," she whispered, voice unsteady. He brushed her knuckles with his lips. "I'm here. I'm not letting go." For a heartbeat she stared at him, eyes shimmering. Then, with trembling courage, she leaned in and pressed her lips to his. A brief, desperate promise, more vow than kiss. Jalen felt her shudder, the weight of all her fears channeled into that touch. She settled into the terminal's seat, guiding cables into her neural ports. He looped the neural tether around his wrist, locking their minds together, two souls balanced over an abyss. Lysara's eyes rolled back. Jalen felt the link open, a vertiginous rush, cold and dazzling. He glimpsed her mind, vast, crystalline, galaxies of memory and logic stretching into the void. Her thoughts flickered past him, childhood under foreign suns, the agony of captivity, the growing wonder of their bond. She located the invasion files, digital glyphs spinning like stardust. She began the upload, her focus razor-sharp. Alarms shrieked through the network. A dozen cartel psionics surged against her, claws of data and hate. Jalen felt the agony ripple down the tether, a pressure like drowning. He gasped, voice echoing in her mind. "Lysara, pull back, don't let them—" But she resisted, fighting not with logic, but with memory. She clung to hope, flashes of Jalen's touch, his voice anchoring her in the dark, the taste of synth fruit on her tongue, laughter in the dark hold. Her memories pulsed through the link, pushing back against the psychic assault. The cartel's attack faltered, confusion radiating from the other minds. Suddenly, the world shuddered. The real crashed through the digital. Jalen heard the hiss of a blade, saw the assassin slip into the vault, shadows swirling around his silhouette. The killer's eyes, cold and merciless, locked onto Jalen. Jalen broke the tether, leaping to intercept. The assassin's knife flashed, slicing the air. Jalen dodged, grabbing a shattered panel and hurling it into the path of the attack. Sparks flew. The assassin was relentless, every move calculated, every blow designed to kill, not wound. Jalen fought with everything he had, training, desperation, the memory of Lysara's lips. In the network, Lysara felt the chaos, panic and adrenaline flooding Jalen's mind. She drew power from it, her own pain rising. Instead of retreating, she unleashed herself, overwhelming the cartel's psionics, not with violence but with raw emotion. The terror of her captivity, the wild joy of freedom, the first flicker of love for Jalen, fragile and fierce. The psychic attackers recoiled, unable to bear the storm. In the real, the assassin lunged, blade aimed at Jalen's heart. In that instant, Lysara screamed, a psychic howl that shattered every sense in the room. The assassin staggered, clutching his head, blood trickling from his nose and ears. Lysara tore free from the terminal, stumbling to her feet, blood streaming from her nose, her scales dull and battered but radiant with a strange, inner fire. The upload's final bar filled. Across the galaxy, screens lit with the truth, the cartel's invasion plans, their fleets, their betrayal. Jalen seized the moment, grabbing the assassin's arm and twisting it until the knife clattered to the floor. He slammed the killer's head against the obsidian wall, rendering him unconscious. The danger passed. Only the sound of Lysara's ragged breathing filled the vault. Jalen rushed to her, catching her as her knees buckled. Lysara, stay with me. I told you I'd stay. I'm not leaving. She looked up, a faint smile breaking through her exhaustion. Odds of survival have improved, she whispered, voice cracked but proud. He laughed, relief and awe mingling. Still less than 1 in 5? She shook her head. Much better now. He helped her to her feet, supporting her as alarms blared and distant explosions shook the vault. They ran, side by side, out of the fortress and into the asteroid's tunnels. Their hands remained linked, tethered by something stronger than fear. Behind them, the galaxy erupted in chaos, news feeds streaming the stolen plans, governments scrambling, the cartel exposed for all to see. They had won, against all odds. And in the echoing dark, as sirens faded and hope flickered through the stars, they clung to each other, knowing the future would be forged by the choices they made, together. On a hidden moon, where dusk glowed violet and bioluminescent trees painted gentle spirals on the ground, Jalen and Lysara purchased a modest habitat. The structure nestled itself among alien flora, petals like living glass, roots weaving phosphorescent webs beneath the surface. The transaction was handled through triple encrypted networks, new names whispered into data streams, a promise of anonymity. Here, the world's chaos felt distant, filtered through the gentle pulse of the moon's wild serenity. News of the cartel's collapse, the invasion's failure, came in fragments, smuggled code, intercepted broadcasts, secret nods from passing traders. The story grew with each telling, the shadow and the seer, the thief and the oracle, who toppled a galactic threat. Their names drifted into legend, whispered by rebels in smoky dens and hackers hunched over ancient terminals. But in their home, legend meant nothing. They simply lived. Lysara thrived, no longer captive, no longer hunted. She tended the alien plants with reverent hands, learning their patterns, their moods. Her trauma, once a chasm, had become a foundation. She moved with purpose, her mind a sanctuary where old pain was woven into new strength. When she knelt among the glowing seedlings, humming a low, resonant tune, Jalen could only watch, awed by the transformation, by the easy grace that had replaced her trembling. One evening, Lysara called to him as he fumbled with a tangle of roots. "You will never convince the flare vines to grow in a straight line," she teased, a playful glint in her golden eyes. Jalen wiped sweat from his brow. "They just like you more. I think you're showing off." She grinned, her tail sliding sinuously around his leg, a silent message, warm and certain. "Perhaps, but your technique is unique." He leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You could just admit I'm hopeless." "Hopeless?" She arched a brow ridge. "No, persistent. That is different." They laughed, the sound echoing between crystalline trunks. Every touch, every tease, was an affirmation. This was real. She was not property nor prisoner. She was free. And he was beside her, changed in ways he could barely understand. Later, as the moon's twin suns dipped below the horizon, Lysara sat cross-legged on the mossy floor, eyes half closed. Jalen knelt before her, fingertips tracing the faint scar at her neck. The old wound, now a badge of survival. "I am content," she said softly, scales glimmering with inner light. He brushed his thumb over her cheek. "Are you?" She nodded, lips curving in a serene smile. "Among my people, we have a word, fusion. It is the merging of two minds, two spirits, into something new, something neither could be alone." Jalen's voice was gentle. "We call it love." She tilted her head, considering. "Love," she repeated, the word strange but pleasing on her tongue. Her hum deepened, resonating with peace. "I accept it." The days blended into gentle rhythms. Lysara learned to control her visions, shaping them into tools rather than torments. She scouted hidden trade routes, sensed threats before they arrived, turned her gifts to protection rather than mere survival. Jalen watched her, pride and relief warring in his chest. Her mind, once a curse, was now a guide. He became something new as well. The lone thief faded. He bartered his skills for supplies and security, patched circuits for settlers, built hidden caches beneath the roots. He was known, quietly, as a man who could make problems disappear, who watched the stars with wary eyes. Their intimacy deepened, slow as the sunrise. Jalen learned the subtle language of her hums, the steady thrum of contentment, the shimmering pulse of excitement, the low vibrato of warning. Lysara, once rigid and uncertain, now sought his touch, her hands tracing his jaw, her tail coiling with affection. Every embrace was a promise, a memory remade. She was free and loved. Peace settled around them like a second skin. It felt fragile, precious. One morning, Lysara stood at the edge of their small clearing, the wind stirring her frills. Suddenly she stiffened, her scales shuddering with violet light. Jalen was beside her in an instant. "What is it?" She pressed her palms to her temples, breath coming fast. "A warning. Psychic. Not cartel. Someone else. A ship approaches, silent, masked. They are hunting, not scanning." Jalen's mind whirred into motion, old instincts flaring. "How many?" She closed her eyes, focusing. "Only one aboard, not a random hunter. This mind is familiar. It is Thalaxian, kin, though estranged. I feel their purpose. Erasure. They come for me, to erase a shame from our lineage." Jalen's jaw clenched. "You're not a shame." She touched his arm, gaze steady. "Among my people, what I became, what I was made into, is seen as a wound. Some would rather I vanish." He looked toward the sky, scanning for a glint of metal. "We need to disappear, now. If they're Thalaxian, their senses will be sharp. We use the land, the flora. Let the moon hide us." Lysara nodded, already adapting. "There is a root system, old, dense. It runs beneath the far slope. I can mask our presence, cloud their mind if they get close." He squeezed her hand. "You lead. I'll cover our tracks." For a heartbeat, they were silent, eyes locked. Then Lysara spoke, her voice a soft vow. "Whatever comes, we face it together. Fusion, love, whatever word you choose." Jalen smiled, heart fierce. "Together." Always. Hand in hand, they vanished into the luminous wild, ready to let the moon shield them from the next storm. Jalen transformed their home into a fortress. Every bolt, every circuit, every root of luminous flora became part of his defense. He reprogrammed the habitat's emitters, weaving a field of false heat signatures that danced in the air like phantom fires. The glowing plants, so delicate under Lysara's touch, were rigged with spore charges, their blooms hiding volatile surprises beneath layers of neon petals. He moved with calm purpose, sleeves rolled, sweat gleaming on his brow as he buried sensors and tested triggers, every movement a silent promise. No one would take this life from them. Dawn crept over the horizon in a wash of violet and silver. Lysara stood at the entrance to a hidden cave, her eyes closed, the frills at her jaw trembling with focus. "He is close," she whispered, voice almost lost in the hush of bioluminescent wind. "His mind is cold, precise. No anger, only purpose." Jalen crouched beside her, the compact weight of his old-world pistol a comfort at his hip. "Just one?" he asked quietly. She nodded, opening her eyes, pupils narrowed to vertical slits. "A single mind, a Xenos mercenary. They say he never fails." Jalen offered a wry grin. "There's a first time for everything." Their breath clouded in the chilly air of the cave, hidden deep beneath the roots of the oldest trees. Outside, the hunter's approach was silent, almost reverent. His steps barely disturbed the moss, his armor ghosted against the trees' shifting colors. He paused, scanning, fooled by the decoy signatures flickering through the undergrowth. A drone hovered ahead, sensors sweeping the ground. Jalen watched through a feed patched into his visor, thumb poised on the detonator. The drone neared the habitat, closing in on a bank of flowers glowing impossibly bright. "Now," Lysara murmured. Jalen triggered the spores. The charges burst in a shimmer of pollen and dazzling light. The drone's feed went white, sensors scrambled, and the hunter staggered back, blinded, his mask slick with bioluminescent residue. Disoriented, he fired blindly into the trees, plasma bolts melting harmless leaves. Lysara moved next. She closed her eyes, focusing, and the world shimmered. To the hunter, the habitat seemed to split and shift, multiple images flickering across the clearing. He lunged at shadows, always a step behind, chasing echoes that vanished the instant he drew near. Her illusions were seamless, whispers of movement, glimpses of Jalen's silhouette, the flick of a tail around a trunk. Jalen slipped through the chaos, silent as a rumor. He circled to the hunter's ship, hidden on the far slope. His hands danced over the hull, disabling the engines, seeding the controls with a warning virus that would display a single message in every language. "The ghosts of Delta Sector are not to be trifled with." He left a calling card, a fragment of synth-fruit rind, a private joke only Lysara would understand. The hunter, still lost in a maze of phantoms, finally collapsed to one knee, scraping residue from his visor. Frustration crackled in his aura. He scanned one last time, found nothing but empty woods and the echo of his own heart. Then, defeated, he retreated to his crippled ship. When the engines failed to start, he howled in rage, but dared not linger. The moon's shadows swallowed him, a legend broken. Jalen returned to the cave, breathless. He found Lysara sitting cross-legged in the gloom, her face pale but triumphant. Blood oozed from a cut at her brow, a psychic backlash from the illusions. He knelt, wiping the blood gently from her face with the edge of his sleeve. "Next time," he murmured, "we add more weaponized flowers." She managed a shaky laugh, gold light flickering in her eyes. "The chance of another hunter is minimal. They will remember this." He cradled her cheek, thumb tracing the old scar at her neck. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it." She leaned into his hand, her hum low and full of peace. "I saw a vision," she said, voice trembling between exhaustion and hope. "A possible future. I saw laughter, yours and mine. I saw your hands building, my eyes watching. I saw us, still here." Jalen laughed then, truly, for the first time in what felt like years. The sound filled the small cave, banishing the last shreds of fear. He kissed her fiercely, as if staking a claim on every tomorrow they might yet have. They had survived. They had outwitted the galaxy's finest. In their small sanctuary, hearts pounding in sync, they were finally home. Years passed in gentle cycles. Jalen watched Lysara in the garden, her tail tracing luminous patterns in the soil, her laughter echoing through the air as she coaxed blooms from the alien earth. He built new walls, new systems, but never the old barriers of fear. He marveled at the serenity etched into her scars, the strength she wore with every motion. They spoke often of happiness, of the strangeness of finding love in the ruins of chaos, of a life neither could have imagined. Every day, every touch, every whispered secret was proof. Legends were nothing compared to the reality they had built together. Their story, shadow and seer, thief and oracle, drifted across the stars, whispered by those who still believed in impossible hope. Yet the truth was simpler. In a garden full of light, Jalen and Lysara had found what neither war nor fate could steal: each other and a future, together. That's the end of the story. You can leave us a tip or become a channel member. This greatly helps our team improve the quality of our videos. You can send a tip using the Super Thanks button right below the video. We truly appreciate each and every one of you who has subscribed and supported us. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.